Hey John, how are you? It's Coach Al. All right, I'm going to spend a few minutes reviewing your video, going over a few things in support of your recent gait analysis. Hoping my video doesn't crash on me today as it did on the day of your analysis. I hope everything will work well. Starting from the postural shots we took, I just want to point out a slight anterior pelvic tilt, which we see more in evidence in the running video, and which you will see shortly. You're presenting this to some degree in standing, and when reviewing that neutral pelvic position and really creating a nice brace effect with the low ab and by tucking the tail, and hopefully this becomes habitual for you over time to create better balance front to back and make that new movement pattern, if you will, something which is unconscious for you, sort of restoring that authentic movement pattern that existed at one time. Okay. Here's some barefooted running video. I'm going to go ahead and let this run here at about half speed for you to give you an opportunity to see this at this rate of speed, which was a little bit more on the conservative side. I had you running a little bit faster with shoes. We'll talk about that when we review that video. But at this rate of speed, you're not presenting any overstriding or only slight overstriding. That would be indicated by this fully extended forward swinging leg. And in part, that overstriding occurs because of a pretty anteriorly tilted pelvis, John, which you present pretty much throughout the entire gait cycle. Even in mid-stance, you're slightly anteriorly rotated. So with limited glute activity, which is part of the reason for the anterior tilt, and a desire to create stride length artificially, and in part I get that because your cadence is relatively low. I'd like to see you with a higher stride rate, higher cadence, so you're landing more underneath your hips rather than slightly in front of the hips. And again, this is less evident with barefooted, but exists quite a bit with shod running, and we'll look at that in a second. Just looking at your, oops, get rid of that. And take a look for a moment at pelvic positioning, and you'll see how the opposite hip from the supported hip drops quite a bit and remains quite unstable. A lot of motion through the lumbar spine, very, very little gluteal activity through this portion of the stride. A lot of motion there, so it's slightly asymmetric from one side to the other. And with that in mind, just looking at a couple of still photos, as part of that cycling, we can see 5 degrees and 8 degrees respectively of lateral pelvic drops. So we need a lot more stability around the pelvis, stronger hips, and you're on that path of strengthening those and restoring that. 11 degrees on the right side, 7 degrees on the left side, respectively, a rear foot eversion. There's a lot of rotation through the lower leg, but you do present as being largely supinated throughout the gait cycle. As mentioned while you're in for your analysis. So the Newton's definitely not a shoe that is going to be appropriate for you. And with your limited flexibility in the external rotators and lack of stability, you definitely are not in a position to absorb as much ground impact and forces from gravity as you will want to remain injury free and also to run powerfully. All right, so here's one of the videos shot with shoes. Again, good evidence here of a little bit of overstriding, meaning full extension of the leg at the front of the body, and as you land and load on the balls of the feet, creates a fair amount of stress through the lower leg. Not optimal for a good glute activation and strength and application of in hip extension, which is ideally what we want. We talked about this at some length while you were in, even in mid-stance, presenting a little bit of an anterior tilt of the pelvis. This is a good shot showing that full extension of the leg. The anterior tilt creates that sensation of tightness, as you're very familiar with, through the hamstring, and then we can see the left foot being in a fully supinated position, coming down into midfoot stance. We can see how much you've crossed over from the midline, and in part this is glute strength being one of the primary external rotators of the hip. So better glute strength, keeping that leg a little bit more underneath the hips, giving you better application of force when making contact with the ground. Quite a few little things which in the big scheme of things all add up to a slightly increased risk of injury and a loss of power and speed or energy leak, a loss of efficiency. So a little bit of the video with the camera angle from the front. So I definitely recommend a period of time, no running, as we mentioned, while you were in, and when you resume running, we'll use a progressive yet conservative plan, and I'll certainly recommend that you're increasing your stride rate and getting it closer to the 90 stride cycles or so per minute range, around 90 or so, or 180 strides per minute. We can certainly talk about that when that time comes. All right, John, any questions at all, please feel free to let me know.